Thomas Hobbes is a well-known English philosopher, mostly remembered for his views on the necessity of a social contract, which was articulated in his magnum opus, The Leviathan. Hobbes bases his ideals on the materialistic reality of which he views life, thus deciding that a formal and intricately designed written social contract is the only way to truly define the actions of men. The cornerstone for his ideals is his pessimistic outlook on the materialistic world, and thus to truly understand him, one must understand his early life, and thus acknowledge how these ideals formed. Hobbes was born on April 5th of 1588. While being born, his mother heard the Good Friday bells from the church, but happened to mistake them for alarms signaling a Spanish invasion, putting her into an instant panic. Hobbes would later be quoted stating his mother gave birth to two twins that night, one being himself and the other being fear. Later, his father, who was a short-tempered vicar of a small local parish church, engaged in a brawl at the church's doorsteps. Now disgraced, his father left Hobbes and his two siblings disappearing, and put the three in the care of his brother, whom was a popular glover in Malmesbury. Hobbes' uncle decided that he was going to pay for the three's education. At the age of 4, Hobbes was enrolled in a school at Westport, where he excelled. Due to being performing so well within his studies, he was sent to a private school. Upon mastering his studies there, Hobbes, at the age of 14, joined the University of Oxford. At Oxford, Hobbes took a traditional arts degree and decided to study maps on his own whenever he could. After leaving Oxford around the age of 20, he became a private instructor to the current, at the time, Lord Cavendish's heir, William Cavendish. 2 years later, the two began touring Europe, heading primarily to France, Italy, and Germany. At this time, Hobbes served the Cavendishes in many ways, including tutoring, but not limited to it, as he was also an accountant to the family, as well as a political advisor and a translator, among many other jobs. Throughout the travels of the two, Hobbes met the leading scholars of the time, namely Francis Bacon and Ben Jonson. Due to being close to the Cavendishes, Hobbes entered many wealthy circles, where many political issues were often discussed, including, but not limited to, the activities of the king and the members of Parliament. Due to his intellectual prowess, he was brought close to power, as well as had the opportunity to study the structure of power that controls the country. Due to being William's tutor, Hobbes was also given the chance to partake in Parliament multiple times. Through his interactions with Parliament, Hobbes became a royalist. As a royalist, Hobbes wrote a treatise defending King Charles I of his own rights. This treatise was wildly popular amongst the other royalists and was published as The Elements of Law, Natural and Political. King Charles was later executed due to a civil war. Revolutionaries overtook him, and upon hearing this, Hobbes fled the country, going to France in fear of his own life. Another outcome of Hobbes's work with the Cavendishes led to him becoming acquaintances with the Welbecks. The Welbecks were a branch family of the Cavendishes that heavily studied mathematics and sciences. Whilst working with them, Hobbes's interest in each of the subjects peaked. After enough of studying amongst them, Hobbes independently pursued the subjects, becoming highly respected in many fields, including but not limited to geometry, ethics, religious debates, literature, and optics. Due to this newly established interest in mathematics and especially geometry, it is much easier to understand why he would come to the conclusion that the world is exclusively materialistic, as those who focus on sciences can only focus on the hard evidence clearly in front of them and cannot deal with the metaphysics of reality, as there's no definitive hard proof of them. Thus, it is easier to understand because of the much more provability of a materialistic focus, it is much easier to understand how Hobbes came up with the idea of creating a hard copy of a social contract to define the ways of man, as if you were to definitively establish a set of rules and ensure that it is intricate enough to properly make men act the way they should in a good-mannered way, then it is much easier to create a sense of balance and flow a sense of peace within a community, as without a definitively designed set of rules, such as the social contract. If the rules were more assumed, it would be much harder to actively establish and enact said laws, as there would be many separate interpretations to these rules. Thus, you have to define every single aspect. Thus, the social contract must be intricate and can't just be a simple law that can be perceived multiple ways. Or at least that's how I view what Hobbes is trying to say through the social contract, and upon studying his past, that's how I came to my perception of it.